Hello and welcome back. This is Dawn with another video for Honeybee Stamps. So today we are going to be doing the easiest faux watercolor technique that I have come across to date. If you struggle with watercolor and the ink smushing is just a little too messy for your taste, this might be right up your alley, and I promise you anyone can do it. So what I've done is I've pulled out some of my favorites, the lovely layers, no surprise there, and I've just pulled out a bunch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some distress watercolor cardstock, and I'm going to start laying out the dies that I'm going to use. I'm going to completely fill up this sheet of cardstock. I'm going to try to get zero waste. So I'm going to go through, pick out the things that I want. I'm going to tape them into place. And again, I'm squeezing them in there, which is another reason why I am taping them into place. I don't want any of these to shift. If your dies move in there and they lay on top of each other, you will ruin your machine or your dies. So when you're packing them in like this, I highly recommend taping them together or taping them in place with washi tape. Once I've run that through my die cut machine, I'm just going to pop out all my pieces and I'm going to put them off to the side in groups. So everything that goes together, I will group together. And then it's on to coloring. All right. I've got my Altenew mat here, and then I've got all of my different things that I have cut in their little piles, like I mentioned. All of their pieces, because again, these layer. So I've used the Lovely Layers Spring Greenery. I've used the Wildflowers. I've used the Lovely Layers Nest and the Lovely Layers Autumn Bouquet. I just said these completely out of order, but again, that's what I used, and everything will be listed in the description box below with a link. So if you're looking for those, make sure you check there. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to use this grip mat to hold our pieces in place while we apply our color. I'm going to put them in order on the mat, in the order that they're going to be assembled eventually. I like to do this because I know that anything on the bottom or in the back is usually going to be the darkest or have the most color, and anything on the top is going to be the lightest. This is going to help me from having to think too much about my color placement because, again, I said this was the easiest faux watercolor technique that I've come across. All right, so we've got our sponge daubers there, our little finger daubers. These are my preferred method of application for this technique. And this is one of those that I think I may have modified it, but I know I've got the idea from Tim Holtz. And, you know, I get a lot of ideas for Tim. He is the master at giving us the ideas, getting our creative juices flowing, and then we just run with it, right? So I've got my distress inks, my distress oxides, and I'm going to use the finger daubers to apply my ink to these die cuts. You can see here there is no rhyme, there is no reason, other than maybe I'm thinking about back layers need to be darker, top layers will be lighter. That's about it. As far as where I'm putting them on the die cut, I'm really not paying too much attention, not giving it much thought, but you certainly can if you want to. My goal here is just to get some different colors onto this die cut. I know right now you guys are like, well, hey, this looks easy enough. I can do this. I promise you can. Anybody can. Now, once I'm done applying my color, we're going to make the magic happen. I'm going to grab a spray bottle. In this case, I'm using the Distress Sprayer, and I'm just going to give these a couple of quick bursts of water. Now, the more water you use, the more this ink is going to move, and the less you use, the less it's going to move. So you can play around with different amounts. If you completely flood it with water, remember these inks are water reactive, and you could completely wash away most of the color. So if you make a mistake, keep that in mind. You can always flood it with water, let it dry, and start over. So you can see there I've spritzed it with water, and in some areas I just used my finger to help move it around. Then I'm going to take these and dry these back with my heat tool. Now again, you can play around with applying more color and less color. You can combine different colors. That's going to be beautiful. This is going to give you that watercolor look with very little effort because, again, these inks are water reactive. They're going to mix and flow, and that Distress Watercolor cardstock has a sizing on the top that prevents the ink from staining the paper, keeps it sitting on the surface so that that ink can freely move around. Now you can try this with different water reactive inks and it should work just as well. But I do prefer my Distress inks and oxides for this technique. To me, they are just the most fluid. Now you'll notice that by using that grip mat there, all of my mess is contained to just that mat. So I don't have any ink on my glass mat there. I don't have anything to clean up except for that mat. This is a great option for you very clean crafters out there. I myself am a creative chaos. I don't mind getting messy, and I actually work best in creative chaos. That's just all there is to it. My end designs, I like them to be very well thought out, and I'm very meticulous. However, the creation of it, if you pulled back that curtain, you would see a hot mess. I make quite the mess when I create. So you can see here, if I wanted to deepen up any of the color or add some variation, I just picked up what was on that grip mat there. And then once this is dry, I can come in and layer on a little bit more color and do the exact same thing. So this would be the inside of the nest. So I'm just deepening that up a little bit. Now when I layer these together, you can see that I've got some variation in color, and it looks like I watercolored each of these pieces. But I really just added some random color and sprayed it with water. Super easy. And I'll do the exact same thing for all of the rest of the pieces for my card. Now I do like to do mine in groups, so groups of color, so that I only have to clean up my mat really one time in between different colors. So here I'm working on some of the wildflowers. I'm using a little twisted citron, and I believe this is rustic wilderness. So again, I'm mixing those lights and those darks. And then I do believe that I use a little bit of blue in some of my leaves too. So a little bit of green and blue, and I let that mix together, and that creates a beautiful blend and mix of colors as well. To do these particular flowers, I'm going to go with yellows and oranges. So I've grabbed the fossilized amber and the squeezed lemonade. And I do normally like to start with my lightest colors and then add in my darker colors. For some variation, I'm going to throw in a little bit of the orange, and I believe I use spice marmalade for this. So I'm just going to hit the flowers here in a couple different spots. And then on my base layer, I am going to add a little bit of yellow to the flower portions. This is going to keep any white from showing through when I go to layer these on top of each other. And honestly, you could use just the silhouette of the flower. You'll see this is going to turn out beautiful when I spray this with water. It creates a gorgeous it creates a gorgeous blend of colors where you could just use the silhouette. You wouldn't even need to use the top layers. So I've done that water spritzing, and now it's just time to dry these. And again, you can see over there on that silhouette one how beautifully those colors are starting to blend together. I've repeated the same process for the rest of the pieces for my card. And I just love the way that this technique turns out. There's no real thought behind it other than what colors you want to put together. You'll want to be careful to use colors that when they mix, they're not going to create mud. So you want to avoid using complementary colors next to each other. So your orange and your blues, your yellows and your purples, if those mix together, they're going to create mud. So just make sure that you're choosing colors that are going to blend nicely, and that's it. Sponge on some color, spritz it with water, and dry it. And you have these gorgeous faux watercolor pieces. Once everything is dry, I just assembled everything. I can't stress enough, you could totally get away with using just the base pieces here. The way these are colored, you don't even need the top layers. I think these have a certain kind of charm with just those base layers. However, the large draw to the lovely layers is the fact that each die has multiple dies that you can cut and color and layer one on top of the other to build up these dimensional realistic things. And if you haven't checked out the Lovely Layers series at Honeybee Stamps, I highly recommend that you check it out. They have a large, extensive line of this product now. So everything from flowers to birds, a front porch, they have a wagon, a fence, critters. So lots and lots of options for whatever it is that you love. I personally love florals, you guys know that, but I'm a sucker for every one of the birds as well. So I am going to be creating with the lovebirds here shortly because those stole my heart. But I mean, look at this, you guys. Look at how beautiful that flower is, and you guys saw how easy it was to do. Very, very little thought in the color went into this, and I've got a gorgeous flower to show for it now. With all of my flowers assembled, it was time to start thinking about my card. And originally I thought I was going to use this blooming view here. I was going to use the window from the blooming views and kind of arrange my flowers in front of the window. So I went ahead and stamped that out. And then I'm going to use the coordinating die here to cut that out. Now this comes in two pieces, so you have two options. You can use the window outer frame to just cut the entire window out, or you can then insert the middle there, which will cut out all of the windows and just leave you the window frame. So you would tape those into place and run them through your die cut machine, and you would end up with just the frame of the stamped window here. Now, I don't end up using this. Instead, what I decided to do was die cut it like I liked this. So I felt like for this card, the stamped image just didn't quite fit with my card design today. So instead, what I decided to do was just cut the blank of the window frame. So without the stamping, just the die cut. So I'm going to use a little press and seal hack here. I know I'm going to need several of these windows because I want it to stack and I want it to be thick like a piece of chipboard. I'm going to take these dies and I'm going to line them up on my press and seal, and that press and seal is going to hold these dies perfectly in place so that I can cut multiple of these and I don't have to worry about the dies shifting and my dies not being cut exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and line these up on, like I said, a piece of press and seal. Once I've got it lined up perfectly, I'm going to push that into place, and then I'm going to flip the whole thing over and kind of burnish that press and seal to my die. So you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and burnish that into place, and this is going to keep these dies together in this exact same positioning so that I could cut this as many times as I want, and I'm always going to have the exact same die cut even though these dies are not attached together. So I trimmed off the excess press and seal and then went ahead and ran this through my die cut machine, and now I have a perfectly spaced, perfectly cut window here. I'm going to remove that. Now I recommend, instead of trying to remove your press and seal from the cardstock, I find it easier to remove the cardstock from the press and seal. So here I just got that started, and now I'm going to remove the cardstock. If I were to pull on the press and seal, I risk pulling it away from the die, but I want this to stay in the exact same spot. So I like to remove the cardstock from the press and seal. Popped out those inner pieces, and now we are ready to die cut another one. So I'll line that up on my cardstock here, run that through my die cut machine, and now I have an exact duplicate of my previous die cut. So I went ahead and cut this one more time so that I would have 3 to stack on top of each other, and then now I've got a nice thick chipboard-like window frame. Now to add color to this, I'm going to use a technique that I've shared before, and I'm going to use first the sponge daubers to apply a base color of browns to my window. I believe I'm using Gathered Twigs, Vintage Photo. I'm using a dirty brown sponge. I'm using the finger dauber that I use for pretty much all my browns. So there's some walnut stain, frayed burlap, Vintage Photo on this sponge. So I'm just getting a base layer down to cover all of the white. And I'm leaving it splotchy and uneven because now I'm going to take my sea sponge and I'm going to apply my ink using that sea sponge. Now I'm using a little bit of walnut stain. I'll then go in with some Gathered Twigs in Distress Oxide, and then I'll finish this off with a little bit of Distress Ink Black Soot. So I like to use a mix of the oxides and the inks because the oxides have a chalkier finish, so again it just adds to that depth and dimension. And you'll just keep layering this on until you're happy with how it looks. And this could be wrought iron or any kind of metal window frame here. Wasn't really going for wood, but I just love the way that this texture looks and the feel it gives. So now we're going to work on our background. I've got the Distress cardstock here again, the Distress watercolor cardstock, and we're going to do a little bit of stencil stamping. So I've grabbed the new Vintage Flourish stencil from Honeybee. This is part of the Vintage Love release. This is a gorgeous, intricate, very detailed damask design, absolutely stunning. And these one-layer stencils are perfect for this stencil stamping technique. So I've grabbed a box, I've put my stencil inside, and I'm going to spray this with a little bit of Distress ink spray. No, Distress spray stain. I've grabbed the pumice stone, and I'm just going to spray this stencil down. I'm going to give it a quick blast of water just to make that stain go a little bit further, make it a little more fluid. And then I'm going to take the stencil and the side that I've sprayed, I'm going to place it right down onto my cardstock there. I'm going to grab a rag or a paper towel, lay it over top, and then just kind of press the stencil into place. Now, using the rag allows us to quickly soak up any excess water or excess spray that may want to seep between the open areas of the stencil. So this just helps us to make sure that we get a nice cleanish impression, because again, this technique, the beautiful thing about it is that it is not perfect. It is perfectly imperfect, and I love, love, love this technique. You'll notice that I've got an uneven inking, so it's kind of got this natural, kind of gave me this organic, worn, faded look, which is what I was going for. So I love the way that this looks. You get that movement, you get those different levels of color there in the back, those different values. Some are a little bit lighter, some are a little bit deeper, especially where it pulled around the edges of the stencil. Absolutely beautiful. So that's just a really fun, easy way to do a background using your stencils, and even quicker than ink blending with them. Just absolutely fun. Here we have it. It is all dry, and now she is ready to go. And finally, we're going to create our bird. So for that, we're going to use the Lovely Layers Winter Birds, and I'm going to use the chickadee here. I'm not going to use all of the layers though. I'm only going to use 2. Originally, I thought I was only going to use this one silhouette piece. So I've die cut that from the watercolor cardstock, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that faux watercolor technique just like we did with all the florals. Now this is supposed to be a chickadee, but there is no reason why you cannot color this any way you'd like. I'm going to do a yellowy orange bird, kind of like maybe a canary. And since this is just a general bird silhouette, this is going to be fine. So this is another fun way to stretch those dies that you might have in your stash and you might use during the holidays. Now we can pull them out and use them all year long. I'm adding a little bit of brown to the feet and to the tail. And then just, I think I do add a little bit of orange here too, some of that orange marmalade. Once I've got the color sponged on, I'm going to spritz this with water, just like before, and then we're going to watch the colors just flow together. I wanted to encourage them to move a little bit more, so I'm going to add just another little quick spray in a little more targeted area here. And then, I can't leave well enough alone, so I want to encourage it to move even more, so I am going to give it one more quick burst. Again, you can control the amount of fluid movement you're going to get from these by controlling the amount of water that you add. I'm going to help this dry by using my heat tool. Remember, the longer you let it air dry, those colors will continue to mix and move. So if you like them to move further and maybe soften up into each other a little bit more, allowing it to air dry will give you a different look than if you immediately start drying it. I'm going to clean off my mat, and like I suspected, this is where I'm going to add in some of that orange marmalade. So I'm going to grab that sponge dauber, and I'm just going to blend a little bit of that here on the belly and on the top of the head. And then I want a little bit more strong color here, so I'm just going to add another layer of fossilized amber. So you can see how all of the different colors we have here is just really bringing this simple die cut to life. And again, super easy to do. Another blast of water, and then dry that down. You'll notice here that I'm kind of tilting the die cut, and I'm using gravity to just encourage some of those colors to run where I want them. And now it is time to put our card together. So I've got all of my pieces and parts here, and the only thing left to do is just glue the pieces together that still need to be glued together and finalize my arrangement. So let's go ahead and take a look at the finished card. I absolutely love how this turned out. Now, I did make a few changes, but basically it turned out exactly how I had originally intended. So here we have that great background that we did that stencil stamping with. And then we arranged all of our Lovely Layers flowers here in the background. Now our bird, I did add that extra layer on top. I just felt like it fit a little bit better with that extra bit of detail, mainly because this silhouette didn't have the beak. So I needed that piece to include the beak. I swapped out the eggs to pull in that pumice stone color from the background, and then I finished it off with a sentiment from Better Together. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's card. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. If you're looking for any of the featured supplies, you'll find them below in the description box. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.